Kentucky, birthplace of KFC, is a vast farming land in the central U.S. where feudal and backward customs are retained. A lot of classical American horror movies that we watched in childhood came out of this seemingly super safe land where crops and little mansions are everywhere, but rural legends and superstitions pervade as well. Mr. Heather was lying in an old, scaling sofa in the middle of the living room, resting. The extremely slow life tempo made him snooze all day. It wasn't the wheat harvest season. Happily, he drank a glass of gin and fell into dreams. He seemed to have dreamt of listening to a death rock. Blood and roar evoked his childhood dream. A teenager wearing dark lipstick with black eye circles, who looked like extreme Marilyn Manson, was holding a scarlet crowbar and staring at him, smiling. He couldn't help but open his eyes a little, trying to tell if this was really a dream.
A vampire?
He sleepily felt that in front of him stood a vampire who was licking lips. The hot breath even poured on his face.
Wait a second!
His right eye got blind. With a wild, twisted laughter from that young man, the tip of the crowbar pierced directly into Mr. Heather's eye, making it a bloody hole. Several teenagers nearby became more thrilled. They screamed loud along with the spurting blood, shrilling screaming and endless killing. That is the Count Vampire. Hi, guys, I'm you. It's the 86th day of home quarantine. I lost my job and suffer from insomnia, preparing to roam Hollywood after the lockdown. But before that, I still want to present you good stories. If it can get your likes, comments and subscription, it's worth remembering. Today's story is as unbelievable as winning a lottery. Let me take you back to the day when it happened. What's the best place of love encounter in your fantasy? Church? Classroom? Manchester by the sea? Young girl Heather thought so too. One day after a quarrel with her parents, she ran out of the house rebelliously. Unconsciously, she ran into a mass grave on a weedy hill in Kentucky. It was a relatively large cemetery near the town. Many poor people were buried there. Due to lack of management, tombs were topsy-turvy, coffins scattered. Girl Heather jumped on a grave. At the time, it was already dusk. Little flowers blooming on the grave revealed a demonic violet hue, as if they were to take man to the other world.
Oh my dear lady, I've awaited you for so long.
Abruptly, she heard a man's voice, a little juvenile but also demonic and charmingly arrogant. Heather was startled and looked back. She saw a man jumping from another tomb not far away and landing in an elegant gesture. His long nails looked like the monster of the Death Note, very exciting.
You are the Vampire King, Vesago?
Asked she, tentatively.
Bingo.
The man approached. He was 15-year-old Farrell. The costume he wore was like King of the Night in Mary Sue stories, pretty enchanting.
Listen, girl,
said he with an eerie look.
I am immortal as long as I drink blood. It is my destiny to lead my vampire tribe to impose punishment on humans.
What he said was truly embarrassing and of shame, but he said it with a serious look.
Are you willing to be one of us?
A rebellious young girl can never resist such a cool man, so she nodded in excitement.
Count Vampire, Vesago, please. Please drink my blood.
Guys, don't think it's just a story plot. Real Farrell was even more unbelievably stupid than what I've depicted. Farrell was born in a single-parent family. His father had left before he was born. His mother gave birth to him at the age of 16. Apart from feeding up little Farrell every day, his mother had a shocking hobby. In fact, his whole family was obsessed with the vampire culture. They wore goth clothing every day. Leather jeans and leather shoes, all riveted. Lipsticks were either blood red or ochre. Studs in their tongue and nose. While other kids were reading Grimm's fairy tales, little Farrell read a houseful of books of alchemical magic. 3-year-old Farrell watched vampire movies, played vampire games, and listened to death metal and rock in his mother's arms. As he grew up, he became even more fascinated. In his first year of middle school, he sneaked into a hospital and stole blood sample to drink. After dropping out of the middle school, he figured out what he was. So he declared in town that he retrieved all memories of last life, in which he was no one else but the boss of a famous video game, the Vampire King, Vesago. Good gracious. My goodness. I can't believe that. It's the first time I've heard that a psychopath would find himself a virtual avatar. After becoming the locally reputed Vampire King, Farrell knew the vampire culture couldn't prosper all by himself. So he founded a vampire tribe, later known as the Kindred, and decorated the garage of his house with witchcraft props. An upside-down cross hung on the wall, and pages of black Bibles scattered about on the ground. Then, the Vampire King started to handing out flyers on street. He invited layabouts in towns, men and women, to take ice and work out together. What's more exaggerated is that they cut their wrists, shed blood in vessels and fed it to each other. In such a reasonably relaxing atmosphere, Farrell gave speeches in the middle of candles arranged in the shape of hexagram. He thought the dawn of vampire was coming. He was pleased to rule the world with them to make it a living hell. The first step would be to transform more people into vampires. Girl Heather showed up right at this time. She was a pen pal of Farrell at first, writing to express the thirst for blood and admiration for each other. When they had the romantic encounter in the cemetery and embraced on the grave, she spoke out her desire.
My Vampire King, the strongest man in Kentucky, could you please help me to kill my damned parents?
Of course, a normal guy would be so shocked when he heard this desire. But the vampire tribe was not normal. Farrell laughed wildly, with a little coldness, a little disdain and a little indifference.
Are you sure, my girl of holy blood?
Eyes squinting. Farrell gently lifted her chin with hand, in a sick but provocative manner.
I'm pretty sure. They always piss me off, so I want them to disappear.
Tribe members applauded. Farrell waved his arm.
Let's go. My brothers. It's time for dinner.
Heather sneakily unlocked the back door as she saw her father sleeping in the sofa, and Farrell crept in with 3 other men. The girl was eager and nervous, expecting the strong Vampire King to punish the parents for her. But the king suddenly came to his senses. He hesitated.
I've lived for 500 years. Humans are as fragile as ants to me. But they are 2 adults, and I'm only 15 in appearance.
He looked at his bros.
We can't bite. You two, go and find some tools in the kitchen.
They found a crowbar and a knife. After drinking each other's blood to show loyalty, they sneaked through the living room and saw Heather's father in deep sleep. Farrell set his teeth and walked towards him, but knocked off a glass. Fearing that the father was about to awake and check the noise, the frantic, immature juvenile completely lost his mind. He stabbed the crowbar straight into this middle-aged man's eye and knocked him hard one after another until his head was crashed into pieces and the brain was splashed on the wall all over. Farrell became exhausted, but Heather's mother heard the noise and ran inside with a cup of coffee. Other guys were so frightened that they all hid behind the sofa. Farrell knew that as the leader, he must be tough. So with his adrenaline going high, he roared, rushing to that woman and killing her in the same way. 2 innocent lives went down to hell as a result of the insanity of a maniac teen and the impulsive vow of a rebellious girl. Actually, during the whole process, the girl and the subordinates were scared silly. Perhaps deep down their heart they never saw the killing really coming. They never expected that the king really dared to kill people. But Farrell seemed to reborn. He ordered them to prepare the magic circle, light candles, and collect bone scraps and blood on the ground with silver vessels. Then they conducted a dark ceremony on the spot to declare that the tribe was bound to thrive and prosper. In the end, they stole some things of value and left the scene. The case wasn't a complex one. The police soon controlled the vampire tribe and took Farrell to the interrogation room. But until that time Farrell was still drunk in his wild fantasy. In response to the question, "Are you really a vampire?" he said,
Vampire for life, babe. Bloody desire inside my DNA.
He sang, danced and rapped in the room, and made intimidating moves, like standing upside down, sticking tongue out and crawling with joints direction reversed. Upon hearing this, you may think he was helplessly sick and had no human sense anymore. But you are all wrong. The moment the court pronounced the sentence of death, Farrell suddenly became sober. He had thought being an underage could help him escape the punishment. He didn't know that his deeds had made both law and morals so offended that they sentenced him death. So he retracted his confession in court and explained in tears that he wasn't an immortal vampire. Vesago's just a character in a computer game, and he himself was just an insane but regular human being. He seemed to grow up overnight. He kept self-examination and confessing sins to everyone he could see day and night. In his memoir, he wrote his mental process throughout. He proactively persuaded his lawyer to help him escape death. 1 year after the case was heard, the court resentenced him life imprisonment without parole. Farrell saw the light of escape. So, this scheming vampire king turned himself into a reflector of adolescent education. During following decades, he wrote and published books, took interviews, and gave speeches with his mother. He counted mistakes of his youth education with an attempt to transform himself into a model of painfully introspected sinner. He seemed to have turned over a new leaf. But dear friends, do you really believe that he became a good guy? Some thought he was already rotten inside, and he was just pretending, but some thought he deserved a chance of starting over again. Whether others believe him or not, what I know is that the couple brutally murdered by the 15-year-old Farrell will never trust the vampire's tears, because if the apology is to be accepted, the vampire's fangs will always be bloodthirsty.